maybe not though. Just 7.
Yeah. Can you hear us out there? I think you can. Yeah. We're going to get started in just a moment. I think we've got a little bit of a public service announcement,
yes,
Kristy.
So if you can please turn off your cell phones, put them to silent or do not disturb mode. And out of respect for the candidates, we know there's a lot of excitement. We're very excited for the next 90 minutes, but we'll just ask everyone to be quiet with no cheering or anything else while everyone is speaking.
We're your moderators.
Yeah.
We'll introduce ourselves in a moment.
Good evening, everyone. Bonsoir tout le monde. J'espère que ça va bien. My name is Benoit-Antoine Bacon. I'm President and Vice Chancellor of Carleton University. I would like to start our evening by acknowledging that our location is on the traditional unceded territories of the Algonquin Anishinaabe people. Carleton University is guided on the road to truth and conciliation by our Kinamagwin Learning Together strategy. We're implementing the 41 calls to action co-created with Indigenous communities on and off campus. Thank you. Thank you all for coming tonight. Thank you for joining us for the final debate between the leading Ottawa mayoral candidates in advance of next Monday's municipal elections. Very exciting. And welcome to the beautiful Carleton Dominion-Chalmers Centre, a truly stunning historic building that became part of Carleton University in 2018. This Centre for the Arts, for learning, for community engagement, is dedicated to providing a welcoming environment for diverse, inclusive, and multi-generational quality community programming. It was really important to us at Carleton that in addition to our beautiful campus, our main campus, as well as our innovation space in Canada North, our footprint in this beautiful city extends here into the downtown core. Universities are vital city-building institutions, and we take a keen interest in all of the developments in our community, including, of course, municipal leadership and government. Many people think that Ottawa is a government town and the public service is an integral part of our community, and of course many elected officials and public servants are Carleton alumni, and we're very proud of that. What people may not fully realize is that there are well over 100,000 people today, 107,000 actually, who study and work at a university or college here in Ottawa. And that's more than 10% of the population. That's also slightly more than the 100,000 or so employees of the core public service who reside in Ottawa. So in short, this is a university town. This is a learning town, a research and innovation city, a knowledge hub, and a tech capital. And most importantly, it's a great community, and it's our home. Carleton University is truly delighted to host tonight's debate, organized by the United Way East Ontario, the Ottawa Board of Trade, and the Ottawa and District Labour Council. We really look forward to learn more about how each of Ottawa's 2 top polling candidates plan to tackle the critical issues within our city. And it goes without saying that addressing complex, multifaceted municipal issues require vision, collaboration, consensus building, and a measure of compromise, maybe a lot of compromise. And tonight we'll learn directly, how do each of our 2 candidates plan to make Ottawa a better place for everyone? We hope you enjoy what is sure to be a constructive and engaging discussion. Thank you again for being here. Merci beaucoup. Bonne soirée.
Good evening, everyone, and those who are tuned in to our live stream. My name is Michael Allen. I'm President and Chief Executive Officer of the United Way of East Ontario. My role tonight is to set out the stage, or set the stage a little bit about what we're anticipating that you'll experience. Before doing so, before they actually formally introduce themselves, let me offer a thank you to Graham Richardson and Kristy Cameron, who will be tonight's moderators and animators for tonight's debate. Frankly, when we spoke to CTV and Bell and asked if we could have their best and brightest, they said, well, we know who those people are, and we're very fortunate to have skilled journalists and, in their own words, political junkies that are in their seats. And although they're yet to be introduced, we want to thank our two lead candidates for agreeing to be with us and address the issues that we believe are important to our city's future. We know both of them are exceptional individuals of character and commitment. We are lucky these days to have anyone who steps forward to commit to public service, and these two are fine examples of them, and we are grateful for them doing so. We are always told in whatever campaign that we happen to be going through that this is the most important campaign in our history. But it's not a stretch to appreciate that this campaign presents many daunting challenges. We are seeking to rebuild from the pandemic. Residents are still recovering, and we're hearing about it daily, the lasting impacts of the Convoy's occupation and the hate, division, and disruption it caused our community. We are also seeing the compounding issues of inflation, the rising costs of living, labor shortages, wealth disparities, supply chain issues, increased demand for under-resourced social services, distrust in public institutions, and frankly, the list could go on. At the same time, however, we are faced with an extraordinary opportunity to build forward better. At least half of our city council will be new. We will have a new mayor as we race into this time of transformation. So it was because of this moment that United Way East Ontario, the Ottawa Board of Trade, and the Ottawa Industrial Labour Council recognized that this moment called upon us to do something different, to present a united front. We must find the things that connect us and align us on shared goals, despite our differences, to build a stronger, healthier community for everyone. We must persistently seek out and struggle for common ground in the face of division. To that end, I want to thank my colleagues at the Board of Trade and the Labour Council, Su-Ling Ching and Sean McKenney, who you'll hear from later this evening, for their courage, their trust, and their commitment to come together in an unprecedented manner to advance the issues we will explore with Catherine and Mark this evening. Social justice, labor rights, economic development are often positioned as distinct goals, sometimes even conflicting goals. It is our contention, however, that one cannot be traded off in favor of any other. They can and must be pursued at the same time. Indeed, each of our candidates has understandably positioned this election as a choice of opposing visions. That is the dynamics of a political campaign. But by this time next week, it is most likely that one of the two candidates who you'll be introduced to in a moment will be our new mayor. And the task of getting elected will give way to the challenge of governing. Our last city council, and at times this campaign, have been divisive. So we felt it important to engage them now to seek an understanding about how, as mayor, they will address our city's complex issues. Just as we three have seemingly different organizations have found common ground to advocate for some of our toughest issues our community faces, so too must our new city government. We have heard from each of them about their approach and that it will be collaborative. We'd like to explore what that looks like tonight under their leadership. We ask that they enlighten us with this. Imagine that next week you're in next week and that you're now occupying the mayor's chair. The task of achieving your campaign vision becomes about how. It becomes about persuading a divided electorate, leading a council, building consensus, changing systems, and at times compromising on a vision. We see in both of them an ambition to forge a brighter path. Tonight we want to hear the spirit and understand the elements with which they will walk down that path. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for being here with us tonight. Look forward to a great debate.
Very much. Thank you very much, Michael. Thank you very much to both of our lead speakers. I'm Graham Richardson from CTV News Ottawa. Got the night off from the news, did a little bit of work over there to talk about politics. It's great to be here with Kristy Cameron.
Yes, Kristy Cameron from Newstalk 580 CFRA. I'm the host of Ottawa Now, thrilled to be here. And since we're ready, we'll welcome our two candidates to the stage, Catherine McKenney and Mark Sutcliffe.
Great to have you both with us. Great to have everybody here and those watching at home. This is going to be 90 minutes. We're going to hear from these two candidates. The theme, of course, common ground, as you've been hearing from Michael. We'll cover three broad themes tonight: affordable housing, landmark infrastructure, community trust, and resilience.
Monday's election is going to be a change election. We've already heard their pitches, we've heard their promises and their platforms, but tonight what we want to focus on is not just that, but how they're going to govern if they are elected as mayor. We're here tonight in the spirit of bridging the divides that have been so prominent during the campaign and during this last term of council.
Journalists and broadcasters are not good at math or at staying within the rules, but they are, so that's good. Here are the rules. Each candidate will have a minute to make their opening statements. We'll ask a question of the candidates. The first candidate will have 1 minute to respond to the question. The second candidate will have 30 seconds to cross-examine or to discuss the issue. We're going to interject. If the CTV debate is any indication, it was very polite, very Canadian. I'm sure it's going to be the same thing tonight, and we're all looking forward to it.
The first candidate will also be able to ask questions, as Graham said, and then we'll pose the original question to the second candidate, and we'll have that same opportunity for cross-examination or back and forth. At the end of tonight, both Mark Sutcliffe and Catherine McKenney will have 1 minute for their closing statements.
And you will hear from them shortly, we promise. We're almost done. We would like each candidate to share their opening statements and consider these themes in your remarks. What's your vision for Ottawa? What principles will you use to accomplish this vision as the next leader of our city?
So we're going to begin in alphabetical order, and then we will alternate between Catherine and Mark for who gets to speak first for each question. Alphabetically, Catherine, your 1 minute opening remarks. Go ahead.
Thank you. I'm running for mayor to make Ottawa a world-class city because Ottawa has so much potential. But we face a choice between cuts to the services you rely on or building the city we deserve. As your mayor, I will invest in affordable housing. We will run reliable transit across the city, including the transit needed in our suburban communities. We'll make our roads safe for everyone. And your kids, 17 and under, will ride transit for free. I have the experience, leadership our city needs. And as your mayor, I will build a city hall that you can trust, starting by releasing my donors list. Together, we can make Ottawa a world-class city, a city that we can all depend on. I hope to have your support on Monday, October 24th. Thank you.
Thank you, Catherine. Mark Sutcliffe, your 1 minute for opening remarks.
Good evening. I was really inspired by the words of Sean McKenney, Su-Ling Ching, and Michael Allen in their op-ed piece, and as they wrote, this is a time of both upheaval and opportunity. It's a time that requires collaboration and consensus. It's a time that requires a balanced approach. And that's what I'll deliver as your next mayor. I've lived my whole life in Ottawa. I'm a husband and father and community leader. I was the chair of both United Way and the Board of Trade, and I've worked for and with not-for-profit economic development and labor leaders in our community for the past 30 years. I'm nonpartisan and non-ideological. Je suis un leader bilingue. We need a compassionate approach that addresses affordability, homelessness, and fairness. We also need a fiscally responsible approach to build a stronger economy and create the resources that we need to tackle our greatest challenges. As your mayor, I'll serve you no matter where you live. I will get everybody working together on Team Ottawa. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark Sutcliffe. Affordable means different things to different people. So we have people experiencing chronic homelessness, renters priced out of neighborhoods, and there's people on fixed incomes like seniors and people with disabilities.
We also have students, we have newcomers that are moving to the city for the very first time, we have young people that want to enter into the labor market, and we have young professionals that are out there dreaming of buying their first home. We've got more than 10,000 households right now on the centralized waiting list for social housing. And this is a big topic in this election, so we'll begin. Mark, how will you ensure housing in Ottawa is affordable and accessible for people with different needs?
This is a really important question, and so do I get a minute here?
You get 1 minute.
Okay, thank you. So this is a really important question, and I've heard over and over again from people throughout the community as I've knocked on doors throughout Ottawa about the need for affordable housing. And affordability is a big issue right now. We're facing an affordability crisis in our community. We just learned today that the cost of groceries is rising by 11%, above the rate of inflation for other things. So that's really noteworthy. I have a plan to build 100,000 new homes over the next 10 years in Ottawa, including 10,000 affordable homes. We can do that by partnering with community housing agencies, with the not-for-profit sector, and with developers by providing incentives to build affordable housing. We need affordable and supportive housing to help the most vulnerable. The clock didn't actually start.
It
so
started late,
yeah,
and you're being very Canadian. That's great.
I'm not going to keep going.
Under the rules, we thank you for that. Under the rules, Catherine McKenney, 30 seconds to respond.
Well, thank you. So my plan is to end chronic homelessness in the next 4 years. We can do this. We know how to do it. We have to invest. We also have to build community housing. We know that the market does not work for everyone. We have to also stop people from falling into homelessness. Those people who are on the wait list, most of them just cannot afford the housing that they're in. And then we need to ensure that we don't lose our existing market affordable rentals, and I will have an acquisition fund to do just that.
Surely you agree on those points, Mark Sutcliffe. You have a minute to respond. I mean, what Catherine McKenney is talking about there, we talk about common ground. There's a lot of common ground there, is there not?
Yeah, there is. I mean, we're talking about similar numbers in terms of building affordable housing, and I agree with Catherine's plan. I also genuinely admire Catherine's passion for this issue. Catherine has been a champion for the most vulnerable in our community and for the homeless in particular, and I admire that. So, I think we both want to accomplish, I don't know anybody in Ottawa who doesn't want to solve the homelessness challenge that we have as a community. I think we just need to get everybody working together and start to build more affordable and supportive homes and provide other resources to people as well.
And our clock is a little off, but on this point it's so important. I want to ask both of you, if you can keep it fairly short just for time. This feels like such a huge problem that where do you start? I know a lot of people who have homes feel that way. What's your answer to that, if you can keep it fairly tight, Catherine McKenney? Where do you start on this very large issue?
You have to start with making a real investment. So I would start first by stopping people from falling into homelessness. We can provide rent supplements so that people don't lose their housing. That would be, if I had to pick one of the four where I would start in the first 3 months, that would be it.
Mark Sutcliffe.
I'd get everybody working together on this. So I've promised within a very short period of time to convene the leaders from the not-for-profit sector and others, Ottawa Community Housing, and start working on a plan to transition people out of shelters and the motels and hotels that are a terrible solution, frankly, and start finding permanent housing for them.
Okay, Catherine, we're going back to the original question. We'll pose it to you. How would you personally ensure housing in Ottawa is affordable and accessible to everyone?
So besides my plan to end chronic homelessness, stop people from falling into homelessness, we also have to look at how we plan our cities. And the best way to build affordable, compact neighborhoods is to ensure that we are looking at transit-oriented development. That is where you take a corridor like Baseline, like Carling. Those are our priority transit corridors. You build bus rapid transit, and then you allow for intense development around that station. To me, that is the key way that the market rental can help to provide affordability. But also on affordability, if I may, what the city can do is provide free transit to youth 17 and under. If you've got 2 kids 17 and under, you're saving $200 a month. So there are other ways that we can make life more affordable for families.
Okay, Catherine McKenney, Mark Sutcliffe, you have 30 seconds to respond to that.
Well, I think there are a lot of things we can do to make life more affordable for people in Ottawa, and I've talked about reducing recreation fees for families by 10%. I think that's an important step. Keeping tax increases as low as possible is another important step. I've committed to limiting tax increases to 2 to 2.5%. And the other thing that I would do, which I know Catherine would as well, is to freeze transit fares. So there's a lot we need to do to keep life affordable for the people of Ottawa during this time of rapidly rising inflation.
Catherine McKenney, you mentioned building around transit. One thing that comes up quite a bit, we hear complaints that the development charges to build around transit are too high. What would you do about that?
So when we talk about housing affordability, we're talking about both market and deeply affordable. And, the role of builders is to build homes, but it's also to build neighborhoods. And, that includes trees, parks, the things that make your neighborhood livable and affordable. So unless we've got deeply affordable housing, I would not support waiving development charges. Growth has got to pay for growth, or existing residents pay for that growth.
Mark Sutcliffe.
So in some limited cases, I would waive or reduce development charges and other fees for builders if and only if they were providing affordable housing and higher levels of affordable housing than what we've seen in the past in Ottawa. I think we need to provide market incentives to make it attractive and affordable for builders to build more affordable homes for members of the community. So I think there are certain circumstances where we could do that.
This is another one of those big problems, this theme, that I'm not going to be cynical, but I am skeptical that the city government can actually solve this problem alone. I know you both would say that, no, it's got to be all levels of government and private sector as well. But what is the plan to increase supply and decrease price? And we're not the only city facing this. We'll start with Catherine McKenney.
The city's role is limited. We can ensure that our zoning bylaws are modern so that we have more as of right zoning in place. That means when a developer comes to build something, if the zoning's in place, that could remove 6, 7, 8 months from their application process. Beyond that, the city's role is to ensure that, we're providing the amenities, we're providing the services for existing residents, for new residents, and there is a cost to that, and growth really does need to continue to pay for growth.
And I am reminded by our organizers, just for structure, it is now Mark's chance to respond to this. Our clock is working 30 seconds based on what Catherine McKenney just said. If you have an issue with that, please address.
I don't have an issue with it, if that's all right.
Yeah.
Or if you have a question.
But to follow up on what you were saying, Graham, first of all, I don't think you should be so pessimistic, Graham. We have an opportunity here as a city to lead by example on this, and we have land available in the city. The city owns a lot of land very close to public transit and the air rights over public transit, and we can be leaders in building affordable housing. So the city, I think, has an enormous role to play on this issue. I ended right on time there.
You did. I told you they're polite.
Just to follow up, Catherine, to you, Premier Doug Ford, it's been reported he's about to impose measures to expedite housing construction to boost density immediately after the election, reportedly looking at eliminating development charges on inclusionary zoning projects. This is in a bid to encourage more affordable renting housing to be built, but it would be a substantial hit. We're talking about money that would be funding infrastructure like roads and transit. If you were to become the next mayor, how would you handle that?
So they are also limiting inclusionary zoning to 5%, which is disappointing, of course. So to, remove those development charges from that portion of housing really would have an impact on the city. But we knew this was coming. The housing plan that the province had put out before the provincial election really did outline much of what we're seeing. And it also outlined the fact that they are removing exclusionary zoning across the province. I think it's for any municipality over 100,000. So what we're going to see, what we need to do in Ottawa, and what I would do immediately, is to ensure that we start to think about what that Made in Ottawa solution would be to densifying and to filling in our neighborhoods. We've got, unique needs in Ottawa. Every city is different. So before it's imposed on us, I would ensure that we look at a Made in Ottawa solution.
There is a bit of a divide here. Catherine McKenney is talking a lot about building what we have and limiting sprawl. I'm sure that, Mark Sutcliffe, maybe you think the same on that, but I haven't heard that as much from you. Why?
Well, I wouldn't say that. I don't want to see sprawl either, and that's why I'm committed to building thousands and thousands of homes near public transit, and I think we have a huge opportunity to do that. I always point to the example of Bayview Station, which is the most important transit station in Ottawa. It's the intersection of the two rail lines. The city owns 21 acres of land there, and there's very little housing around Bayview Station, given that it's the intersection of those two train lines. And the city could build a housing there in partnership with Ottawa Community Housing and other social housing agencies. So there's lots of opportunity for intensification. I want to see that kind of smart intensification without a blanket removal of R1 zoning across the city, which would, I think, cause fear in some neighborhoods that large structures would be going up next to existing residential homes. I don't want to see that widespread change. I would do it more strategically and surgically. But I think there's a huge opportunity for us to build more houses. And if we don't do that, what we're going to see is not only sprawl, but we're going to see people moving to places like Arnprior and Kemptville and Rockland, and they're going to be living outside the city, but driving into the city to do things and using our city's resources and not paying taxes here, and we don't want that.
Okay.
And Mark, we also wanted to get a response from you. How would you handle the position of the provincial government, the elimination of those development charges we mentioned?
Well, I think Catherine's right. We need a Made in Ottawa solution. Every community is different. That does present a challenge because we need development charges in many cases to build the infrastructure throughout our neighborhoods, and so we'd have to look at that very carefully. I've already heard from many residents as I've traveled the city that there are people living in neighborhoods, recently developed neighborhoods, who feel that the resources, the infrastructure they need is not there yet, and we're still playing catch up on that infrastructure. So we're going to have to look very carefully at how we would fund those resources, that infrastructure, if we're not charging development charges.
Okay. We are going to shift to our next section. We're going to talk about landmark infrastructure, which impacts everybody here. We've got the next stages of LRT, the new Ottawa Hospital, LeBreton Flats, and our amazing hockey team, maybe. There's a labor shortage. No, they are an amazing hockey team. Sorry, just maybe on LeBreton. Never mind. We've got labor shortages. We've got a struggle to hire skilled workers. We want to talk about that and about also how do we draw in every part of the city to benefit from these kinds of mega projects and infrastructure projects.
So, Mark, we'll start with you. With those major projects that Graham just described, the labor shortages, the supply chain issues, we also want the development of a strong, diverse, healthy workforce, timely delivery in the face of these labor shortages. How would you manage all of that? What is your plan?
We need to get everybody working together. This is really important. So Ottawa needs a strong and vibrant economy going forward. I've worked in economic development as a volunteer, as a chair of the Board of Trade, a board member with Invest Ottawa. I was on the board of Algonquin College. And we need a strong economy to create more jobs, good paying jobs in our community, and also to create the resources that we need and the tax revenue at the City of Ottawa to pay for the priorities that we have going forward, including helping the most vulnerable. So that's why I have a plan to develop our economy even further, to attract more tourists to Ottawa. We need a talent strategy. We need to get the best and brightest people living in Ottawa. It's no secret now that there is, more than ever, There is a choice that people have about where they live and where they work, and they don't necessarily have to be the same place. So if Ottawa is going to be a place that attracts the best and brightest, we have to have an incredibly attractive place to live. So there's a lot more I could say about that, but I know my time is up.
It's been 30 minutes and no one's touching the wall!
Okay. Okay. Is that one of our volunteers? Are they not the person yelling? Are they okay? Who took that person out?
He came in with that person.
Okay.
Yep.
So that's a stunt?
Yep.
Everybody all right? Okay.
Yep.
So, sorry about that. We can't control everything. It's a public place.
Yeah.
We wanted to give Catherine McKenney a chance to respond to Mark Sutcliffe's comments when we were interrupted, but you have 30 seconds and maybe a few seconds here or there because of what just happened.
Sure.
Okay.
So I agree. We do need to have a world-class city to attract and retain talent. But that is a world-class city with housing that suits everyone's need, with world-class transit, bike lanes, libraries open on Sundays, recreation centers that provide swim lessons to kids and to seniors. And it means, having festivals in our city. We can't just wish for a world-class city. We actually have to invest in a world-class city.
There does not seem to be much difference on your messaging, both of you. You did mention bike lanes, and it has been a point of discussion for the... quickly, both of you, starting with Mark Sutcliffe and then Catherine McKenney. What is it about this issue from your perspectives that has caught people's attention?
About bike lanes?
Well, Catherine McKenney's proposal.
Sure. I'd rather keep talking about the growth of our economy, but maybe we'll have more time for that after.
We will.
Since you asked, I think it is a question of priorities. And I've heard when I've knocked on doors throughout this campaign in every part of the city, from cyclists and from others. I'm a cyclist myself. I ride my bike often. It's a matter of proportion. I've heard over and over again that people don't want to see $250 million, $250 million, spent on bike lanes in the next 4 years when we could use those resources for something else, and when we could fix our roads at a time when they're in the worst state they've ever been. So I think it's just a question of priorities, and that I'm reflecting what I've heard from many, many residents throughout the city.
Well, I'll say this, we spend $15 million every year on cycling infrastructure. We will continue to. Any modern city will. If you want to attract and retain workers into this city, we've got to have that type of infrastructure. My plan is cost neutral. Yes, there is interest, but we know that what we can buy today with $15 million as opposed to 20 and 25 years from now, that is how inflation works. Moving it all up today just means that we're keeping you safe today, we're keeping your kids safe today, and we're keeping you alive today when you're out on the street. We had somebody seriously had a catastrophic injury last night on Saint Laurent Boulevard. That has got to end. This city has got to do better. We have a moral obligation to keep everyone out there safe.
Catherine McKenney, quick question on that, because you're talking about the finances, and then we'll go back to the original question. But aside from the finances and the green bonds, do you think you can actually realistically build that much cycling infrastructure in 4 years?
Well, other cities have done it. We can look not far away to Montreal. Kingston has made substantial progress on cycling infrastructure. Absolutely, we can. If it's a priority, we can. Again, it's economic development. It means jobs. It means bringing investment into our city. It means being able to attract young talent into our city. So I do. If in 4 years we've got like an extra 6 months or a year, so be it, but at least we will do our best.
Okay, same question to you with these major projects underway, trying to balance the need for a strong, healthy workforce, but also understanding that we have supply chain issues and labor shortages. How would you manage that? Catherine McKenney.
Well, again, it's about attracting people into our city and where they want to come to work, where we pay fair wages to our employees, where we attract businesses that also pay fair wages. You know, the workforce is out there, but we're all competing for it, and building a world-class city means that we will get the opportunity to attract that workforce, to be able to build our LRT, our hospital, LeBreton Flats, the housing that we need to build.
Okay, Mark Sutcliffe, 30 seconds. You can ask a question or respond to what McKenney just said.
Well, I think it's really important that we focus on economic development. We just heard more news today that interest rates are going up and there's a potential recession around the corner. I think a lot of people are very worried about that. Inflation is rising, so we need to invest a lot of time and energy in economic development, and I have the experience to do that. I've worked in economic development for 30 years. I was one of the founders of the Ottawa Business Journal. I've volunteered on these issues. We need to start retaining the best talent, the kinds of people who are going to launch businesses like Shopify in the future. We need to keep people here after they go to university in Ottawa, and we need to create a climate that stimulates entrepreneurship. We also need to attract more tourists and events to Ottawa. That's a big part of my plan as well. So we need a solid economic development plan. I did release an economic development plan earlier in the campaign. It's very comprehensive, and we will get everybody working together, and I will be a champion for economic development as your mayor.
Similar, same theme, LRT, the Ottawa Hospital, LeBreton Flats. 1 minute to Catherine McKenney on how are all workers from all parts of the city going to benefit from that kind of investment? Because often some workers, some areas of the city feel left out.
Mm-hmm. Well, certainly LRT is underway. Phase 2 is underway. We've got the workforce, working on Phase 2. It's a little bit late, so they get a bit of extra work. But for the hospital, certainly that's going to get underway. It's above ground parking garage, which is unfortunate, but LeBreton Flats is a different workforce than the hospital will be. LeBreton Flats is going to develop in stages. We've seen that, where it's going to include mixed income, mixed use, housing and development. So it's a different set of labor needs, if you will. But again, I go back to all cities are going to be competing for the same labor, the same workforce, and we'll get it if in fact we are offering a city that's got great festivals, that's got great housing, that's got great transit, that's got bike lanes to get people around. That is what a young and engaged workforce is looking for.
Mark Sutcliffe, 30 seconds to respond.
There's a lot we need to do, obviously, to get these projects moving forward, and I think it's a really exciting time for our city right now. We could have very soon a world-class hospital in our community delivering healthcare. That's a big part of quality of life in our community, a big part of attracting people to our city. We can't let anything stop that from happening. I think LeBreton Flats is an exciting opportunity as well. The city needs to play a role in that, even though it's federal land. So all of this is an opportunity, not just for growth and development, but for good paying jobs. And I think the leaders of the organizations behind this debate would all agree that represents a huge opportunity for our city and for the people working in it.
One of my follow-ups that is a little bit off script, but not, because you both mentioned LeBreton. And if you could keep, both of you keep it brief, we'll start with Catherine McKenney. Should the city be subsidizing a hockey rink at LeBreton Flats, a new one for the Ottawa Senators?
No, I don't believe that the city should be subsidizing the hockey rink, but I think that the city should be working with the NCC to bring the hockey rink to LeBreton Flats. It has to be on our LRT system. We've seen the success of Blues Fest and other festivals at LeBreton and what that means. People can travel by LRT, by bus, so that is where an arena should be located.
And just so I'm clear, the investment of the LRT should be the extent of the city's investment in any new rink at LeBreton Flats. That's the position?
That's correct.
Any difference from you, Mark Sutcliffe?
I don't think the city should be putting any dollars into an arena. I think we need to look at what the plan is before we talk about anything else. The city, there may be ways that the city can use that facility. We don't know what the proposal would be, but I'm not in favor of putting dollars into a private arena. What I am in favor of is seeing a lot of vibrant development on LeBreton Flats, including an arena. And I think something that we really need to pay attention to is that if the Senators are not playing in Canada, that's a potentially an economic development issue for Canada. The Canadian Tire Centre is a big driver of economic development in Canada. We can't overlook that. So there needs to be a plan for what's going to replace the Canadian Tire Centre in Canada if the Senators aren't playing there anymore.
And I hear you both. Edmonton, latest example, I believe, was $600 million from the city of Edmonton. So that's why I wanted to ask it, and we're going to move on.
On to our next topic. We've been through COVID-19. That was very difficult. We're still talking about the Freedom Convoy. There's the inquiry that is on right now. It's bringing up a lot of painful memories and moments of division and disruption to our city. I'll begin with you, Mark. This is 1 minute for this question. What steps would you take as mayor to empower entrepreneurship in Ottawa while also supporting the well-being of workers?
I'm an entrepreneur. I'm a small business owner. I've been a small business owner since I was 18 years old, and I've worked with Invest Ottawa and with other organizations, the Board of Trade. I've been a mentor and advisor to more than 100 different small business owners in this city. So we need to stimulate an environment where people are excited to start their own company. There's a lot we can do to make Ottawa more business friendly. For one thing, we can cut down on the processes and the red tape and streamline the process at City Hall. Too often, I hear this all the time from business owners, they're bounced from one department to another. We can have more of a one-stop shopping kind of approach, but we can create more of a culture of entrepreneurship in our city so that people are starting companies and they're hiring people and employing people and paying them a really good wage. I think there's a huge opportunity. I think it's in the best interests of everyone in the community, United Way, members of the labor movement, and the people starting the businesses themselves. I think it's a big opportunity.
Catherine McKenney, you have 30 seconds. Specifics as well. Can you talk about specifics on this question? Or respond to Mark, it's up to you.
Yeah, absolutely. As a councillor for the past 8 years, I've had the opportunity to sit on 5 BIAs, plus a mall authority on Sparks, plus the Elgin Street Business Association, which I've worked with. So when we saw COVID happen, it became very clear that what businesses, small local businesses were looking for was people. We needed to have places for people. Some of the most successful businesses, most successful initiatives that we took were closing down parts of the street to allow people to gather, to go to small businesses. Those are the types of things that we need on our traditional main streets. We need people, and we need great public realm and fun places for people.
Okay, Mark, you have a minute to respond, but I wanted to go back to something that you said. You said, let's create a culture where people want to come here and start small businesses. What did you mean by that?
I think there's a lot that we can do as a community. Invest Ottawa is a great organization. The mayor is usually the co-chair of Invest Ottawa, so there's a role for the mayor to play in working with people in the business community to stimulate entrepreneurship. I think we can do a lot more with mentorship. We can make Ottawa a better place to do business, an easier place to do business where there aren't so many roadblocks and obstacles. Quality of life is a huge part of that. There's Carleton University has a wonderful business school. There are graduates from that every year. We want them to stay in Ottawa and build businesses here. We have to make Ottawa an exciting place for them to stay so they don't go to another community to start their business. They partner with people here and launch their companies. So there are a lot of specific things we can do to make Ottawa have a culture of entrepreneurship.
30 seconds for Catherine McKenney. I want to follow up with convincing other people on council who don't agree with you on this issue and other issues. But let's start with this issue. Are you confident you can do that? There was a bit of a divide, to say the least, in the last council.
Yeah, we're going to see almost an entirely new council. We'll have a new mayor. We'll have at least 12 new councillors. It'll be a challenge, you know, coming in fresh is difficult for new councillors, but it's also an opportunity to work. Work with new councillors who are coming with new, fresh ideas. I work very well with all of my colleagues today. Some of them may even surprise you. I work probably closest with Scott Moffat. So we'll work together. What was missing on council this past council was the opportunity to discuss issues, to disagree, and then to move on. As your mayor, I will ensure that everybody has a voice, and we can disagree, but there will not be, we will allow for that type of dissension.
And I think that, and we are going to, Kristy's got a question, but the other massive element, of course, was the convoy and the reaction to the convoy, and that, I think, cracked that open in an unusual way, whether it's police, city council, or the police services board. Kristy's got another question.
Speaking of our social service sector, it's facing rising costs, it's facing worker burnout, like a lot of different sectors right now, long-term client needs. We'll begin with Catherine McKenney. If you become mayor of the city, how would you support the social service sector in Ottawa?
So when you look at our social service sector and the investments that we make, we've got almost 100 organizations that we pay to carry out work on our behalf. They're the food programs, they're housing support workers. We've got to support them. We can't cut services, we can't eliminate our services at the city. But key to that, really, I want to go back to housing. Because key to making anyone well is housing. People who are precariously housed in rooming houses, people who are living in shelter, people who are at risk of losing their housing. And there's thousands of people who are either homeless or at risk of losing their housing. The first thing they need is stable housing. So we need to invest in the workforce. We need to invest in people who are able to go out and engage and ensure that people are not losing their housing and that they are placed well into housing.
Mark, you have 30 seconds to respond or ask a question.
I talked a little bit about the volunteering that I've done. It's really easy to be a volunteer for United Way or for Kidstra or for some of these other organizations. You show up, you contribute a little bit, and then you go home and you go back to your full-time job. The people I really respect and admire are the people who work full-time in these organizations, many of whom are in the room tonight, who I've gotten to know over the years. I have so much respect for the people working in these organizations who quite frankly, earn less money than they would in other jobs, do much more difficult things in those roles, encounter enormous challenges in their work every day. So we need to support those people, and we need to support the work that they're doing. I have a plan to invest $4 million specifically in the area of homelessness to help the agencies that are helping the homeless. We need to find other ways to support the work that these people are doing.
All right, and on this issue, we'll go Catherine and then Mark before we move on to the next one. I know it feels like in the streets of Ottawa, I know it's been getting worse, these issues. More people on the margins. It feels like more addiction. It feels like, we're seeing it, more demand for the most vulnerable places like the Mission and Shepherd's of Good Hope. Regardless of who wins, where do you start on that? And we'll hear from both of you.
So it is getting worse. COVID affected us in very different ways, and it wasn't equitable. People who were already on the margins suffered much more than those of us who were able to just go home and work from home. I think the key thing, there are a lot of things we need to do in terms of the opioid crisis and how we provide a safe supply, but I think two things are key. One is we have to end chronic homelessness. We have to house people, but as important is we have to deal with people's isolation. Because even if you house someone, even if somebody, is given a meal, they're alone. They're out there. They're walking from one, food kitchen to another. They're going to the shelter at night or back to their rooming house. I think that it's key that we address people's social isolation if they're going to get better.
Mark Sutcliffe.
It breaks my heart when I see what's happening in so many parts of our city, especially downtown in the Byward Market, when you see people who, the conditions they're living in and with the trauma that they're going through. We need to get everybody working together on a solution for this. And I actually heard Kristy, you speaking about this on the radio one day about just how you were working from home for a long time during COVID, and when you came back to work in the Byward Market after the pandemic and you were returning to work, just how different it was in that period of time. So I know this is a concern for people right across our city. I've heard people talking about it when I've been in Canada and Alta Vista and Stittsville and Orleans. So we need to make the investments required to support the agencies that are helping the most vulnerable in our community. We need to build more supportive housing. And we need to get everybody working together on this because it is a shared responsibility.
There has been much discussion and debate about what to do with Ottawa's downtown core because we've been through so much during COVID. We don't even have our ridership back on OC Transpo to what it was. We have some people that are continuing to work hybrid from home. So Mark, I'll stay with you on this. What do you see for the future of Ottawa's downtown core?
This is really important because without a strong downtown, we're not going to have a strong city. I have a plan for downtown Ottawa. It's on my website at marksutcliffe.ca. It has a number of different components to it. I think going forward, and by the way, I think this might be the greatest turning point for downtown Ottawa in many years. The fact that people are not working in the office as much and are working from home more often represents both a risk and an opportunity. We have the potential to reinvent downtown Ottawa, and if fewer people are going to be working downtown, then perhaps more people can be living downtown. And a lot of that housing could potentially be affordable housing. We need to make Ottawa, downtown Ottawa, a vibrant destination that people want to go to even if they're not working there. So we can't do anything to discourage them from going downtown, like higher parking fees or congestion charges or any of that sort of thing. What we need is to make it a destination, and I have a plan to do that, including building, having more events downtown and potentially building a new cultural attraction in downtown Ottawa.
Catherine McKenney.
Oh, well, I guess I'd remind people that people do live downtown. We actually have pretty vibrant residential neighborhoods in the downtown. So I do remind people that when we talk about what's emptied out, it's the commercial sector, and the commercial sector has emptied out. But people live around Elgin Street, people live around Somerset Street, so what we're talking about here is making that commercial sector a place for people. And without people living there, without it becoming a neighborhood for people who live there, mixed income again, mixed use, so that we've got commercial and retail, so that we've got space for artists. There's all sorts of things we can do with that. But it is difficult to convert commercial buildings, and we've got a lot of work to do.
Okay, Mark, back to what you said about making downtown a destination, making it something new, because we're at a turning point. Part of attracting people downtown is getting them there. Right now, if you're trying to get downtown on a weekend or an evening, you have pretty limited bus options. How would you improve transit so that people can get downtown?
We definitely need to improve transit. So we have a light rail system that takes people downtown, and we need to offer them the opportunity to go downtown and have a reason to go there, and more reasons to go there. And that's why I've talked about having a new cultural attraction and having more events. It's interesting because there's a lot to do near downtown Ottawa, and LeBreton Flats potentially would be another example of this. There's a lot to do in terms of attractions just outside downtown Ottawa, the National Gallery, but apart from in LeBreton Flats, but apart from the National Arts Centre, there aren't as many things to do right in the heart of downtown Ottawa where the office buildings have typically been. And I think we need more attractions there, and we need better bus routes and better transit to get them there.
Catherine McKenney.
So we do need better transit to get people around the city, but we actually have to invest in that. We've de-invested, we've defunded transit since 2011 in the city, and we're at a point now where you actually can't take transit to get you where you need to go on time. So my plan is to invest 20% back into our transit services to get us back to where we were in 2011 before we optimized the routes, which really meant serious cuts to the routes. And by doing that, we have an opportunity now to put buses into people's neighborhoods. We're not commuting the way we were, so we can, fit transit routes into different communities, suburban communities, so that you can get around your own community. You can go to the library, you can do groceries. It's not necessarily all commuter traffic anymore, but you have to make the investment.
Moving on to another question. I said at the time, don't like to quote myself, but I think it's going to be years. I'm being light, but it's a serious. I think it's going to be years before collectively we recover from the trust lost during the convoy. I don't think that's a partisan issue. I think that people downtown felt abandoned. It was a free-for-all. No one was coming to help. And I've never experienced anything like that in 30 years of covering politics or anything. How do we, whoever becomes mayor, start that process to rebuild the trust and recover from the convoy? Catherine McKenney, and then we'll move to Mark Sutcliffe.
Well, yes. I mean, we're right in the area where the occupation occurred, and we are witnessing again, and we're watching the inquiry into what happened. And it's shocking, just the lack of leadership, just the vacuum that we had in leadership and anyone stepping up. So, I mean, at the very least, the first thing we have to do is rebuild trust in our city, rebuild trust in all of our institutions. It's been lost. People are still feeling trauma from what happened, but we need to start by building trust in our police services. And the fact that we've got an outgoing chair of the board who's going to appoint or hire a new police chief tomorrow really is quite shameful. This needs to wait. We need to make sure that whoever's the next mayor and the next council rebuilds that trust and moves forward with the hiring of a new police chief.
And Mark Sutcliffe, that is a difference between you two. The announcement is coming tomorrow. Did you want to respond to that?
Well, I don't know if the announcements. I've seen the reports that the announcement's coming tomorrow, but
confirmed
at 2 p.m.
It's confirmed now. So yeah. So we have to recognize that the hiring of a police chief is not the responsibility of the mayor and city council. It's the responsibility of the Police Services Board, which is an independent organization. It's an independent board that has some city councilors on it, but also some representatives of the community. And I don't think there should be political interference in that process. We don't want to politicize that process. If the process had taken till next week or the week after that, maybe it wouldn't be announced tomorrow, but at some point we would have a new police chief announced by the Police Services Board based on a process that started some time ago. And I think we have to recognize, many of you have been in organizations where you hire a new leader. It's not something you do in a couple of days. It's a 3 or 4 month process. We haven't had a police chief. The women and men of the Ottawa Police Service have not had a permanent police chief for 7 months now. I don't think we need to delay that process any further just because we're waiting for a new mayor and council.
Right. That being said, we are in the middle of a public inquiry where we're still learning new information about the upheaval and the turmoil of that time. I'll go to Catherine McKenney first. You already touched on this briefly. Should we be picking a police chief? Should that be announced tomorrow when the public inquiry into what went on during the Freedom Convoy is still happening?
No, we absolutely should not. This is historical. We saw the Emergencies Act enacted in this country because of what happened. People lost trust in our institutions, federally, provincially, municipally, in our police services. This is not the time to rush through. Council appoints the majority of Police Services Board, and as mayor, I would take my seat on the Police Services Board, so I would, in fact, have a role to play in who, and to rebuild that trust. Not about who, it's about rebuilding the trust in the process.
Mark Sutcliffe,
So I would just ask on that respectfully, by the way, I would take a seat on the Police Services Board as well if I was elected mayor, but I'm ready to work with whoever the Police Services Board chooses as its police chief. I'm ready to work with whoever the fire chief is, whoever the head of paramedics is. That's about, working together with whoever's available. I don't need to handpick the next police chief. So I would just ask what that process would look like if we're waiting until after the election. Does that mean delaying the appointment of the chief for another 3 or 4 months, starting the process over again, or is it simply rubber stamping the decision that they were going to make anyway? I don't think that people of Ottawa want to wait that much longer for a new police chief. They want leadership of their police service.
All right. So,
anyone else?
I was going to say, how many?
Go ahead right now. Get it out. Get it out.
So
get
I
it
do
out,
want to
and then
say,
we can move on.
Who's going to pay for that
I do
wall?
want to say this is an important point because there's 14 people on the ballot, and
That's one of them.
And we struggled for our debate.
Yeah.
We wanted as many as possible, and we went with our poll. And we had 3 front runners based on the poll, and everybody else was at 1%. I would rather have 4 or 5 if they were higher, but I asked people, including them, where do you cut it off? How do you choose from that 1% to add to this stage and still have a discussion that's fair? So it's easy to sit there and yell, and obviously they want to be up here and they're pulling their stunts, that's fine. But it's not something we don't talk about, and I know this group did the same thing as well. So it's thought about, it's discussed, and it looks like we're trying to engineer things, and we're not. We're just trying to have a good discussion, and you have to cut it off somewhere because 14 people up here would not serve anyone. And so I'm speaking for this group, but I think they had the similar discussions about how to do this. So where were we?
So I think.
Well, no, it was me, actually.
Yeah?
Nope.
I think I was.
No, you were up. You were finished.
Okay. This is.
No, I was watching.
Yet another Canadian moment.
I was interrupted, but
Okay,
I was almost.
okay.
I was almost.
You
it's
go
fine.
ahead.
Yeah, it's fine.
No,
well, no. I mean, I just.
No,
I think the
take
men
on.
and women of the Ottawa Police Service and the people of Ottawa want to have a police chief, and we don't want to politicize the process, and we don't want to wait another 3 or 4 months for that to happen because we need leadership.
Okay. And briefly before Kristy has a follow-up, but if, Catherine McKenney, I think, does want to respond briefly.
Yeah, absolutely. Trust in the police services was shaken after the convoy. It's not about me. It's not about Mark. It's about building trust. It's about what is best for our community, and what is best for our community is that a new police chief is chosen with a new police services board. We will have an entirely new police services board. That is the time to start rebuilding that trust.
Mark, back to the common theme tonight, our third theme of rebuilding community trust. Has hearing the Emergencies Act testimony up until this point changed your perspective at all on how the occupation was handled?
I think it's confirmed what a lot of people in Ottawa felt at the time, which was there was a failure of leadership at all levels of government. And I, as a resident of Ottawa, I was very disappointed at how the situation was handled. And I don't think we should ever let that happen again. And rebuilding trust means, I think, respecting the people of Ottawa, respecting the process of hiring a new police chief, respecting the independent work of the Police Services Board, having new leadership at the city and starting to rebuild that trust, having new leadership at the police service and starting to rebuild that trust with the community.
Catherine McKenney?
Well, I mean, I was part of the inquiry. So I've heard things that have not shocked me, but I've heard things that I know have shaken people's confidence in our city, in the way that we responded to, a convoy that became very quickly an illegal occupation, one that terrorized residents, one that, made it impossible for many people in this neighborhood, in this community, not to be able to leave their homes. We saw swastikas, we saw Confederate flags. We allowed an occupation to take root when, in fact, strong leadership could have stopped it.
Okay, and we will. We're gonna move on. Again, I'm inserting myself. Sorry, but to both of you, here's what I was covering it. So was Kristy. But today we heard 2 weeks and still no police plan. I find that extraordinary, and I appreciate this is a public inquiry, and the judge will hear all and then make a decision. To both of you, starting with Mark and then to Catherine, did that surprise you? Like, in those 2 weeks, my assumption was greater minds are meeting and they're going to figure this out, and it sounds like they were fighting. You're going to have to deal with that as mayor, both of you. To Mark.
If you look at what was happening during those 2 weeks, I don't think it would surprise anyone that there wasn't a plan. I think there was a failure of leadership at all levels of government while that was going on, and that's why we can't let it happen again. If I'm elected mayor, I'm going to do two things. I'm going to make sure that there are emergency plans in place for those situations. We can expect that they're going to happen more often, or the threat of them will happen more often. We'll stop them from happening if we have the right plans. And the second thing that I think we need to do is strike a new deal with the federal government, because the taxpayers of Ottawa are bearing the burden of not only paying for a community police service for our city, but also policing a national capital. And when these events come up, we pay for it all. We go to other police services and ask for their help. And then we have this gigantic bill, and we've got to go to the federal government and ask for a favor to pay it back. And I think we need a new deal with the federal government that has more ongoing funding to support the Ottawa Police Service in policing the national capital.
Catherine McKenney.
Yeah, well, I agree. I actually brought a motion to council that was supported to ensure that the parliamentary precinct did extend at least to Wellington. I'll say this, whoever the new police chief is, I will support and work with that new police chief. But what we saw happen with the convoy was a result of the divisiveness on council. We had a mayor who did not share his phone number with the chair of the police services board. We were in danger. This city, we had lost our capital city. The federal government wasn't acting. The provincial government wasn't acting. Again, it comes back to ensuring that what we do is in your best interest, not in ours.
Okay. On the theme of the debate tonight, we're going to stop talking about division so much and let's come together. And I'll start with you, Catherine McKenney. You have 1 minute. There will be no 30 seconds to respond. What is one thing, when you look at Mark Sutcliffe's promises, his platform, what is one thing that you say, hey, I like that. That should be incorporated at Ottawa City Hall?
Oh, just a sec, I want to record this.
Got it? Early on, Mark talked about the housing that we need built in this city, and we do. We need to find a way to build at least, 10,000 new homes every year. So, we can have further discussions whether that should be 12,000 or 13,000, depending on what we're looking at. But I have to say that when Mark came out with the 10,000 home plan, I thought, yeah, absolutely.
You still have 26 seconds.
Okay.
Keep going.
So then, when
Jackie's here from CTV. We have a lead. No, I'm just kidding.
Mark Sutcliffe, same question to you. What is one thing in Catherine McKenney's platform,
or
your
more.
opponent's platform,
Yeah.
that you'd like to see incorporated?
Yeah, I mentioned already, I admire I admire Catherine, and I admire Catherine's passion for the most vulnerable in our community, and Catherine's plan to help the homeless. And look, I'm going to take some of this time to say something else. This has been a long campaign. Catherine and I have seen each other a lot over the course of this campaign, and I've heard people refer to this as a hostile campaign. I think those are people who are spending their time on Twitter and not out in the community where the campaign is really happening. I respect Catherine McKenney. I think Catherine McKenney respects me. We've actually enjoyed some very friendly conversations over the course of this campaign.
Tell them about the beaver tails.
Yes, we have a deal. Breaking news, breaking news. We have a deal that when this is over, I'm buying Catherine a beaver tail, because she's never had one before.
I've never eaten a beaver tail.
So,
No, we said whoever has the highest paying job will buy the other one. So I'm buying his.
yeah.
But we're going out for beaver tails.
So, you know, I think I admire Catherine. Catherine's run a great campaign, and we should, you know, I think we've given the voters of Ottawa a real choice in this election, and I hope the people of Ottawa are grateful for that.
Yeah.
I now know, for the first time in my life, how hard it is to run a political campaign, and I respect everyone who's running, everyone who's on the ballot in this election campaign, including and especially Catherine, who, as it turns out, it seems to be we're each other's main opponent at this point.
Yeah, and that is a great point, and from both of you as well. Refreshing to see on our CTV debate, there were some, even on Twitter, who appreciated that they got to listen to you. There was some discussion back and forth that was quite polite, much like tonight, and they appreciated it because they could actually listen and they could make a decision, and that's what we're supposed to be all about. We're going to, before we get to closing remarks, we have one more question, and an important one, and each have 1 minute. How will you make Ottawa feel safe, welcoming, and prosperous for everyone, including people with diversity of language, ability, race, culture, sexual orientation, gender identity, and religion? These are questions that all leaders should be and are grappling with now. We're going to start with Mark Sutcliffe and go to Catherine McKenney.
This is really important to me. My parents were immigrants to Canada. My mother was from a family of mixed race that moved here in the 1950s from China. And I'll try to talk about this without getting too choked up, but the city of Ottawa was incredibly welcoming to my mother's family. I'm sure they went through a lot. They don't really talk about it a lot. But by and large, it was a great experience for them to move to this country and for them to start a new life here. That's what we have to deliver to everyone in our city. I think there is some great work happening in the city already by the United Way and by many of the agencies that it supports to promote diversity and inclusion. But at the same time, we still face horribly, tragically, more and more examples of hate and bias in our city, and it's got to stop. And we've got to start working harder and harder together to stop it from happening. We don't just want to deal with it after it happens, we have to prevent it from happening. So diversity and inclusion is a huge priority and must continue to be so.
Catherine McKenney.
So I was fortunate enough to represent an area of the city that has welcomed newcomers to the city for generations. And one of my favorite people, she's now gone, was Marion Dewar. Marion was a friend of mine, and Marion, thanks.
Can I jump in just to say I was Marion Dewar's paper boy? Just putting that out there. Fun fact.
She told me that. She said you were often late with the paper. No.
We're adjusting the clock, don't worry.
But when you think about what Marion did and just in making that decision because it was the right thing to do to welcome 4,000 Vietnamese refugees into our city, it meant that today we've got a city where we've got schools, where we've got recreation centers, where we've got parks. That would not have happened. That changed our city, it built our city, and when we think about into the future and what we need to do, absolutely, we have to stand up to discrimination, to hatred, but we also have to always think about how are we welcoming newcomers, and a lot of that is about inclusion, but it's about affordability as well. That's why people were able to settle where they did.
Mm-hmm.
And would you believe it, that actually brings us to our closing statements. So both of you will have 1 minute each. Catherine, we'll begin with you.
I have to find it.
That's okay.
So is it alphabetical order by first name or last name? It's the same either way, I'm just joking.
Like,
I was stalling for you, Catherine.
We're just the talent. We're following the script, you know?
I was just going to count down. Okay, thank you.
Go ahead.
Thank you. I decided to run for council when I saw deep cuts at the city, and they were decimating city services like transit. And today I'm running for mayor because our city does face a choice between building a world-class city with the services that are here that you can all rely on, that make your life easier and more affordable, with the transit, the affordable housing that we all deserve. I have the experienced leadership our city needs, and I will build a city hall that you can trust. My name is Catherine McKenney, and I am ready to be your mayor. Thank you.
Catherine McKenney. Mark Sutcliffe.
I think voters are asking themselves a lot of important questions right now as they prepare to cast their ballots. Who can bring the whole city together? Who can bring together not-for-profit leaders, community and business organizations, and organized labor to find common ground? Who can build Team Ottawa? Who has a balanced, responsible plan that is both compassionate and fiscally responsible? Who will manage taxpayers' dollars carefully so we are keeping costs low and investing wisely on the most important priorities? Who has a plan that aligns with the priorities of residents throughout Ottawa, in the rural, suburban, and urban parts of the city? I've been serving my community for more than 30 years. We face some unique challenges right now that require a unifying force at City Hall. We need fresh ideas and a fresh perspective. I'm on Team Ottawa, and I'm ready to lead Team Ottawa. I will get everyone working together to solve our challenges and build a brighter future for everyone in our city. Thank you.
And thank you both. Thank you very much. I'm going to bring up Sean and Sue Ling for some closing statements.
Thank you, Catherine, and thank you, Mark, for taking part in the debate this evening. It was really good. It was great, and I'm sure that everyone enjoyed it. And thank you to Graham and Kristy for pressing them on the issues. My name is Sean McKenney, and I'm president of the Ottawa District Labour Council, here this evening with Su-Ling Ching, president and CEO of the Ottawa Board of Trade. It presents an occasion unseen and unheard in our respective organizations' 150-plus year history in the city of Ottawa. Both our organizations have been here a long time. The Ottawa Board of Trade since 1857, the Ottawa District Labour Council since 1872, yet never have we worked together, nor come together. Labor and business are not well known for their collaboration, yet here we are at this event, workers in business, and with United Way East Ontario, helping to round out our social justice voice, all of us in pursuit of common goals and a better future for our city.
Catherine and Mark, thank you. I think there's one thing that we all can agree on is that Ottawa is very fortunate to have two such impressive and passionate people who are willing to serve. So we thank you for being here tonight. Thanks for sharing your views on the matters that will impact our progress for labor, for business, economic development, and social justice. Our organizations are working together in the interests of our respective mandates because we know that we have more in common than not. And that by working together with a focus on that common ground, we will better serve our businesses, our employees, and our community. It is this level of collaboration that we hope to see in our next City Council. We intend to work with our new mayor, be that Catherine or Mark, in this same spirit. Now is the time to build up Ottawa as an affordable, inclusive, and sustainable city by leveraging an economy powered by our executives, our entrepreneurs, and our employees. The last 2.5 years has highlighted many faults and inequities in our systems. Collectively, we have a responsibility to move forward differently, be a model of leadership and future thinking for the next generation, for our nation's capital, and for the world. On behalf of the Ottawa Board of Trade, the Ottawa and District Labour Council, and United Way Eastern Ontario, thank you to everyone for showing up, for engaging, and for casting your vote on October 24th. I wish to say thank you to Optimal Show Experience and Knock on Wood Communications and Events for executing this event this evening, Hot Shoe Productions for managing the live stream, Sign Language Interpreting Associates of Ottawa for the American Sign Language interpretation, and all of the volunteers and staff from our organizations who came together to make this possible. I want to add my thanks as well to our professionals, Graham and Kristy, for being here tonight and making it such a fabulous debate. We have a new opportunity to build a better future for all. We must, and together we will. Thank you and good night.
Thank you. Thank you all very much.